Hi, Marilyn here with Cotton and Chocolate. I'm back talking about piecing with Saturday Sampler month 2, which is March, Halloween figs with a twist. And so I want to lead you through the piecing. First, we're going to do block 3, which is the flying geese cross block, which is this block right here. So hopefully you've gotten all your fabric cut out and we're ready to piece. So all of it, as I explained earlier, are half square triangles, which I did not cut the blocks and cut them on triangle. I kept them in a square so that I'm going to piece them a little bit differently. So you can follow what I'm doing, or you can go ahead and do it however you feel comfortable, but I'm going to show you my technique and why. I piece them from a square, cut them down, and then I'm using the block lock, so I make them a little larger, cut them down to size, and the reason I do that is that they turn out really perfectly. So I really like this technique. You can see how it works and then decide if you like it too. So we've taken all these blocks, you're going to take and pair them all up together. Basically, all of them pair with this black with circle fabric, which is of course this purple fabric. So you can pair them all up. So what I do is I actually draw my lines on the back of all of the lighter printed fabric. I drew it with a Sharpie only so that you can see it on film. Normally I would draw it with a pencil. I wouldn't draw it with a sharp, darker fabric. And I use my my Quilter's Magic Wand to draw it. So I take this magic wand and then I mark it, lay it on here, and you may not be able to see it, but it has this little line right in the middle, and I line it from point to point, take my pencil and draw it on each side. Now when I'm sewing, I sew a little bit on the inside of each of those lines, and it gives me just a little bit bigger triangle. Don't sew it on the outside because then it's going to be smaller, of course. Okay, and then you're just going to cut it apart down the center, and you can use a ruler or freeform it however you're comfortable. And they say in here to press open. If you're going to use a block lock, you need to press it to one side, and I press it to the dark. In this case, I pressed it towards all of these dark purple or blue pieces, so they're all pressed consistently. So I pressed it to that edge. Now I've cut these down to the correct size, all but one, just to remind you of cutting. So I have my block lock here, and it says here indicating you have to cut all your squares down to 2 5/8. Boy, that's, exact. So, 1 tick over from your 2.5 inch mark. If you have trouble keeping that, you can always put a little piece of tape there to mark it. You can put a little Sharpie mark there that will come off with the alcohol swab later, whatever it is, so that you keep that in place and do it exact. So you have a ditch. The ditch, the shallow part of the ditch or the canyon is the part that the ditch is, that it is not pressed towards. So I press towards the darker, so my canyon is on the right hand side. And I have the block lock emblem on the canyon side, and there's this little groove here that's going to set right into that fold. It's going to slip right into there. So I slip it down a little bit. I can see my 2.5 inch mark, and I know I'm going to go 1 tick over for 2 5/8. And I'm going to take and trim off that edge. And then I had a bunch of these to do, so I take and get them all set up in the same fashion and trim that side off first. Okay, and then when I had this one, I trimmed it, and then I take and line them all up, and I flip them, and I flip the ruler, so now it's still set up for the canyon side, and I'm going to slip it right down into place and slip it down to that 2 5/8 inch mark. And I can see it's 2 5/8 and 2 5/8, and then I trim it on this side. Okay, so they're all trimmed off. And you should also make sure, if you did it correctly, that you're trimmed off at the point. Okay, so I have them all trimmed down to 2 5/8. Now it's time to set up my block. So you can see I have the centers set up correctly in the middle. It might be a little hard to follow the directions on the sheet just because it's black and white. So it's easier to follow the picture. which is the greens in the middle and my little purple circles in the middle facing each other. And then the outsides are pretty easy because it's kind of the open print with a little more dense purple print. Opposite here, and then the dense purple print with the open floral print. So they just flip each other. And that's going to be the same on that side and that side. So you can pair those up and sew that pair, and it's going to be the same on each side. So you'll have that pair sewn together, and that set, and that set, and that set, and then you can sew them together. You can see the sewing of the pairs here, and then you're going to sew that side over and that side over here, and then that to that, and then that side over to that side. Okay, so you have your edge here and your edge here, and then the centers, and then side to side, and then at the very end, you're going to sew your little triangles on the corner, and the corners, and the four corners there. Okay, and when you see it, so you can see it at the top, the final sewing, and then the final sewing of your last corner G's lined up, and then your final block. And I did have to trim it up to 12.5. Mine was a little bit oversized, which is kind of nice. So I trimmed it up to 12.5, watching the 1/4 inches on the side so they don't get cut off. So trimmed it down, meaning trim it down to 12.5. So that's your flying geese cross block. I'm going to take these out of the way and then show you the piecing for your next block, which is the crown star block. And it's a pretty easy block. It's one of them. You're going to make another one later on. So the first one, you're going to take this square and you're going to make a connector corner. And I do use my folded corner clipper. So I've cut one of these off already where I had the edge in. So you're going to do opposite corners with your 2-inch square. So I'm going to put this one on this corner. I did this side and sewed it on, and those flip off. You have to do the opposite corner, so I'll just demo that. So I'm going to put this on my 2-inch here. So you can see I have it all the way around. I'm going to trim this off. And you need to do the opposite corners first. And I'm just going to piece that. And then you can see I have the indents for my 1/4 inch on there. And you can pin it if you would like. It's kind of small, so I don't usually need to pin it. And sew that on. And then you need to press, you get that ruler out of the way. You need to press these open on each side. Okay? So I have these pressed open, and you need to do that prior to adding your other 2 sides, because what's going to happen here is when I do this, now I have to lay this down and cut these off, so it's going to be set up like this. But you can see when I do this and cut this, it cuts off a tad of that prior piece. Now I'm going to iron that, and then that's going to press open, and the opposite side, and you'll have that little snowball block with a perfect 1/4 inch right in the corner. Okay, so that's going to be my center, which is right here, that block. Now we're going to make our little crown. To make the crown, the first thing that you have to do are make these cute little pieces on the outside. So we take our square and we take these nice little triangles, and what I do when I'm piecing these is set them up how they're supposed to look, because it's easy to get confused. So I look at the picture in front of me, and I take the block and I set them up how they're supposed to look prior to piecing, so that I don't sew them the wrong way. And you have to have 4 of them, so I set all 4 of them up prior to piecing. Okay, so do that for yourself. And then the first one, you're going to pick it up, and the piecing is like this. You set this down, you line that up just like that, and you're going to piece straight down here. And you will have that tag right off of there. Okay, and this one, I have one piece somewhere. Well, I did have it pieced when I'm moving everything. Here it is. So this one is pieced with that point coming off, and then I'm going to press it open. And it does have a little tag right off of there. And I'm going to trim that off before I piece the next one. So now the next one is going to be put, once I piece that on, well, I'll just piece it. How about that? Okay, so I'm going to piece that on. Okay, and I'm going to press towards the triangle. Oh, that keeps, I got to flip that over. Okay, so there you go. So now you see you have that little tag sticking out. I'm going to clip that off. So now, where does the next one go? Let me lay it down to make sure it looks correct. I'm going to sew all four like that. So it still has to look like that. So this one's going to lay right on top of there. And that corner is going to line up. And yes, you will have a little tag sitting out that way. So I'm going to piece this one this way. And I'll take all four of them and string piece them through. Okay. And then I'm going to open it up and press towards the triangle. And you will have this little tag sitting out there that I'll clip off. Okay, so now I have this nice piece like this. So now the next thing you have to do is add your triangle to the outside. So these, you know that it can't go like that because that doesn't fit. So it has to be like this and that. Okay. So how do you get that to fit and how do you measure it up? Well, this is going to line up exactly with that corner there, and you'll have a little point out there. I'm going to sew that down and press it open. And then the other piece here will match exactly up right there. Isn't that nice? And I'm going to sew that down here and open that up, and then you have your nice piece here. So when you have all your corners on your center, your snowball, you kind of have to do some pretending here that it's done. And then you have your corners of your crown.
I think it's upside down.
Oh, it is upside down. Oops, your crown is upside down. Your crown, and then you'll have four backgrounds in each corner. So you have your crown going around the outside, just like this. So you have your crown, your crown, your crown, your crown, and then your backgrounds around your square and a square. So it's a pretty easy block to make once you get going. And then another month we'll make another colorway. So that's month 2, and there you go. Thank you very much.